I am giving myself 48 hours to recreate one of the internet's most beloved game, The Binding of Isaac. But here's the thing, I will be making it 3D. Also, this was a really hard challenge, so consider subscribing since like 0% of you guys are actually subscribed. Thank you. Okay, so the first step is recreating Isaac in 3D. So let's open up Blender and get to work. Right, so after about 20 minutes I have this, and I'm not gonna lie, I think it looks sick. I mean, if you compare the both of them, they look pretty much the same. Okay, so I imported Isaac into Unity, and now we need to recreate its mechanics from the game. So thankfully Isaac's mechanics are fairly simple. We have his movement, and we also have his attacks. Okay, so for the movement, we can just detect the horizontal and vertical axes, which in my case is just WASD. And then based on that, move him in the corresponding direction. We'll also turn the actual model to make him face the right way. In the meantime, I also created a running animation for him, and I'm not gonna lie, it looks cursed. But since the camera will be further away from him, I'm hoping it will look fine. So with all of that, Isaac can now run around in a 3D space. The other mechanic we need is of course his attacks. In the game, Isaac can shoot tiers in a 4-directional axis, using the arrow keys. So in Unity we can program exactly that. Simply detect the arrow keys being pressed and change the shooting direction based on that. Then we can just instantiate our tier in that direction, access its rigid body and give it some force so it moves forwards. Only issue is that we don't actually have a tier, so to test it out I just had Isaac create himself, and well, that's an image I never thought I'd have to see.
What the hell is this? Oh my.
Okay, so this is the tier I actually created. It's just a blue sphere with an outline. I also gave it this projectile script, which means the tier gets destroyed after its lifetime is reached or if it hits a wall. And to make the game a little bit more polished, I gave it some particles and sound effects. So now the actual Isaac controller is looking pretty much the same as in the original game. Next up, I needed to create the dungeon generator, and to be perfectly honest, it was probably the most difficult part of this challenge. Now, people in my comment section usually ask, how do I learn programming? How do I get into it? And well, today's sponsor Brilliant is the answer. Now hang on, give me just 1 minute of your time. Brilliant is essentially just a platform that you can access through your browser. You go on it and learn. But not just by sitting there and listening to boring talks, instead you are actually physically doing things, which in my opinion is the best way to learn. It has lessons from maths, data analysis, computer science, of course programming and much more. All of the content on Brilliant is also crafted by people who know what they are doing, because there is teachers, researchers and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google and more. Learning a little every day is one of the most important things you can do, and Brilliant helps you do that, with fun lessons you can do whenever you have the time, and they don't have massive time commitments. The platform has a ton of different content, from getting familiar with Python, learning essential coding elements from loops, variables, to nesting and conditionals. Brilliant has it all. So if you've ever had the slightest urge to learn programming, maths, or anything of the sort, today is the day. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Zyger. Or click the first link in the description. You'll also get a 20% off of an annual premium membership. Now, let's actually get into the dungeon generator. Next up, I needed to create the dungeon generator. In the actual game, every playthrough is different because a new random dungeon gets generated. The way it actually works is the dungeon is made up of a grid of rooms. The game randomly selects and arranges these rooms, and connects them with doors. But some rooms are always present, like the starting room and the boss room. So inside of Unity, I created this room prefab, which is literally just a plane. But trust me, I just need you to envision it for a moment. Inside the script, I create an array where we can supply however many different rooms we want. Then the generate dungeon method creates a grid of rooms, starting with the tutorial room at the center. It randomly adds rooms up to the maximum number specified, checking for valid positions and connecting doors between adjacent rooms. As for the boss room, I created this function that ensures that it's placed as far away from the starting room as possible, resulting in random dungeons getting generated each time I press this button here. Okay, so if we rewind a minute to the doors I mentioned earlier, I ended up creating 2 different models for them. One is just the basic one, which resembles the most common basement door in Isaac, and I also created the boss room door since that one needs to look different. After adding them in, you can see the script automatically will enable/disable them, depending if there is a room on the other end. In the meantime, I also created some materials and added them to the rooms, which means the dungeon is looking a lot nicer and, well, a lot more like it is in the original game. So with the dungeon finally finished, it's time to move on to something else. Obstacles. So inside of Isaac, rooms have a chance of having obstacles. This includes rocks, poops, square blocks, ravines, etc. To save on time, I decided to create just the poops and rocks for now, since I believe they are more common than the others. For these, I downloaded some models from Polypizza, because when I tried to model it myself, well, this happened. Okay guys, do you like my poop? I mean, funnily enough, it looks nothing like the actual poops in Isaac, but it does resemble actual shit. Anyways, I imported both models into Unity and gave them a material and collider, so now technically the obstacles work since Isaac can't, go through them. The only issue right now is that the poops should actually be destructible, so I created a version of the poop that is destroyed. And yes, this time I actually modeled it myself. I then attached a script onto the poop that detects tears colliding into it. Once a couple of the tears collide with the poop gets destroyed and turns into this thing, that the player can now walk over. Next up, I needed to add some enemies into the dungeon. Unfortunately, the Binding of Isaac has hundreds of different enemies. Thankfully though, since I'm only recreating the basement dungeon, I can just create the enemies found there. That shouldn't be that many. Oh my. Okay, obviously I don't have time to create all of those, so instead I opted to make two. The first one being the attack fly. I created this model inside of Blender, which was actually really easy, since geometrically speaking it's really simple. In Unity I gave it some materials and quickly animated a flying animation. Then I moved on to working on its AI. The fly simply will just chase Isaac and deal some damage on contact. To make this work, the fly orbits around the player at a specified distance and speed, and attacks the player when within a certain range, dealing damage. It's actually super simple. For the second monster, I created a level 2 spider. The model for this one was looking a little bit more cursed. In this scene it's slightly better, I guess. The AI for this particular enemy was going to be a little bit more tricky, since it's located on the ground and therefore needs to avoid obstacles. So I made the spider crawl towards Isaac, but I added my own collision detection into it, because I didn't want to use the nav mesh system Unity provides. And well, let's just say it works 80% of the time, and sometimes it does this. But I had no time to fix it since I have less than 24 hours remaining on the challenge. Okay, so we are near the end of the challenge, just 2 more things to do. The next important feature to add was consumables. This includes hearts, keys, coins, and bombs. I got some 3D models downloaded for them and imported them into Unity. Then I gave them a pick-upable script, so now when Isaac collides with them, the items get destroyed and added to an inventory system. The only thing that has an actual physical use right now is the hearts. Everything else is useless because I simply didn't have time to code the logic for those. And now the final thing to address is the boss. Again, just like the enemies, the basement dungeon can have many different bosses. But since I had no time, I chose to recreate just one, Monstro, since he is the first boss I ever encountered in the game. Since modeling was already a lost cause at this point, I found this model online. Only issue is that it's used for actual 3D printing, so the polygon count is through the roof. I quickly separated some parts of him and assigned different materials inside of Unity. Now it was logic time. The first thing I added is I made him slowly move towards Isaac. Next up I added his projectile attack, so every so often he will spurt out this projectile that damages the player. Then I needed to add his jump. In the game he will jump up really high and aim to land on top of Isaac. Once landed he will shoot out these different projectiles. So I got the jumping working with a rigid body, and then once he lands I make him again shoot some projectiles. I added a simple health system to him and, well, now you can actually fight him. Honestly, it's a little difficult since there isn't a lot of room here, but I guess that's the point. Just before the timer ran out, I quickly recreated the menu from the game, but tried to make it look as 3D as I could. And well, the game is finished. So unfortunately, I won't be releasing the game since it is literally a direct copy of Isaac. But if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and I would greatly appreciate it. And again, if you guys want to learn something new, check out Brilliant with the link in the description, or go to brilliant.org/Zyger, and start your 30-day free trial now. Plus you can get 20% off of an annual premium membership. Bye!